So the battle of the backs, right? I mean, so Pro Football Focus had an article talking about here's the headline: the biggest NFL training camp battles at every offensive position. And so they look at basically the biggest competition. So for instance, starting with quarterback, Trey Lance versus Brock Purdy versus Sam Darnold, right? That's what they do. The um uh the the wide receiver battles, they've got all of them as well, but they go position by position through the NFL. Uh, for wide receivers, it's Kadarius Toney versus Sky Moore versus Marquez Valdez Scantling versus Rashee Rice for the Kansas City Chiefs. All right, so they go through position by position. At the running back position, they have the Atlanta Falcons, Tyler Allgeier versus Bijan Robinson. Here's what they say. When the Falcons drafted Bijan Robinson, number 8 overall in the 2023 draft, many assumed he would immediately step in as the lead back and take the lion's share of the work. But perhaps there's a bit of Lee Corso in the, quote, not so fast, my friends, unquote, to be had here. Lest we forget that Allgeier was the 5th-round pick from 2022, rushed for over 1,000 yards last season, leading the team with 210 carries with a healthy, while averaging, I should say, a healthy 4.9 yards per attempt. Though Robinson will likely be the feature back in Atlanta sooner rather than later, Allgeier's fight for every inch running style is hard to put on the bench. It's a style that's inspiring. Now, I want to read you the last line of this because they talk about Cordero Patterson and all that kind of stuff. But how Robinson performs in training camp will tell us how much of a committee or lack thereof the rushing attack will be in Atlanta. Okay. So with all due respect to Pro Football Focus, and I really like Pro Football Focus, unless you can give me better metrics than Pro Football Focus, then I will believe in them. I don't think everything is lockstep gold and just, set in stone and everything. But unless you can give me better metrics, then I'll look at them and I'll follow them. But until then, Pro Football Focus, I think, is the best source for that. But the interesting thing is that last line is that, what Bijan Robinson does in training camp will decide, if it's more of a committee. Well, guess what? It's going to be a committee of running backs. Now, whether Allgeier leads the team in rushing attempts, whether Bijan Robinson does, isn't going to be any really big deal because they're going to get plenty of carries between the two of them. We talked about this last week about the fact that I definitely think that there's a chance that both of those backs could be 1,000-yard running backs in this offense. Arthur Smith doesn't have a Derrick Henry to just lean on one guy and run it 500 times for him. They've got a two-headed monster, and they're going to play Allgeier and Bijan Robinson a lot. Again, if one guy gets 250 carries and another guy gets 210 carries, that's not a big difference between those guys. They're both going to see lots of work. There's no lacking of, carries to be had for Tyler Allgeier or Bijan Robinson. Now, look, the guy who probably is going to get phased out a little bit in the running attack is Cordero Patterson. Oh, I definitely think we'll see his carries diminish, but his ability to stay in the slot as a wide receiver, his receptions could go up. And obviously, I don't think Desmond Ridder is going to run it nearly as often as what Marcus Mariota did last year. So those carries have to be dispersed to your running backs. So there's still going to be a run-first, run-heavy team. And it's interesting where they talk about the idea of, Allgeier fight for every inch. Well, look, he averaged 4.9 yards per attempt. He averaged 3.6 yards per attempt after contact, which is an outstanding number. I mean, 3.6 wouldn't be the worst number in the world to average as a running back. He did that after contact. So 4.9 yards per carry is nothing to sneeze at. But there's going to be plenty of carries for both of those guys. And the way we know Arthur Smith works in rookies, he doesn't just throw his rookies to the wolves and just say, okay, have at it. Whether it's Desmond Ridder, whether it's, Tyler Allgeier. Tyler Allgeier only started 7 games last year. Whether it's Richie Grant, guys like that, Arnold Ebiketie. Those guys don't just get thrown to the wolves when they're drafted. I don't care where they're drafted, first round, second round, what have you. they just don't get thrown to the wolves right away. Even Kyle Pitts was worked in slowly. You remember Kyle Pitts in his rookie year at times was not in the red zone on some of those offensive sets. So they're going to get plenty of carries between Robinson and Allgeier. And that's why I think that they can both end up with 1,000 yards. If they both can run for somewhere 4.5 to 5 yards per reception, per carry, then they absolutely can both be 1,000-yard runners. Because again, it's not Derrick Henry taking up 400 carries. It could be 200 carries apiece for Tyler Allgeier and Bijan Robinson. And when you factor in Mariota's carries, when you factor in probably the reduced role from Cordero Patterson, I don't know how much Caleb Huntley coming off the injury is going to carry the football, but you've got two young guys at running back that could be really productive in this offense. And even if Bijan Robinson doesn't run for 1,000 yards, you're going to look at his all-purpose yards, running, receiving. You're going to look at that number and be kind of blown away. Here's the thing that I talk about all of this, okay? I don't care what their yards are. I don't care the competition, this and the other. Tell me we're an elite red zone team. Tell me we're elite in the red zone, 67% touchdown percentage in the red zone, and I know that everybody's feasting. I know that everybody's at the dinner table and they're filling up their plate and they're getting their stomachs full. That's what I care about. I don't worry about, who's, if one guy gets 250 carries, one guy gets 230 carries, that doesn't really matter. What matters is that they're a touchdown efficient offense. And with the personnel that they have the ability to be that. And they can run it in at all different places on the field. Bijan Robinson's a home run hitting running back. Allgeier's a guy who bounces off tacklers. Cordero Patterson can give you a nice mix of the two where you just kind of change it up a little bit in the style and, the downhill running style that Cordero Patterson has, the kind of no fear running that he has to go along with some of the speed. But the Falcons are in great shape, and I don't really look at this as much of a competition with Robinson and Allgeier because there's plenty of carries to go around for both of those guys. There'll be plenty of action for both of those guys. That's why I say they have that ability to both run for 1,000 yards this year, no matter who starts. Allgeier ran for 1,000 yards last year in only 7 starts. He didn't have to start to get his touches and his rushing attempts. So I like the idea of having the competition, but I don't really think it's much of a competition when both guys are going to be winners in this offense. All right, as you make Hittin' Hard your first listen, make sure that you go into whatever podcast platform that you're listening on and let us know that you're an everyday listener to the program. So we like to call them our everydayers. We thank you so much for being a part of our community and certainly continue listening every day, Hittin' Hard, Monday through Friday. Let us know that you're an everydayer, as we like to call them, as an everyday listener 5 days a week into the show.